So this is how they see me, I muttered under my breath as I stepped into the sunlit dining hall, the scent of fresh lilies mingling with the faint aroma of roasted ham and sweet potatoes. The room buzzed with laughter and chatter, a cheerful symphony that only made the sharp sting of exclusion more acute. My table, meticulously set with my own china, gleaming silverware, and neatly folded napkins, bore a sign in bold black letters that read, "The Failure." I paused just inside the doorway, my fingers gripping the handle of my coat, my heart tightening for a moment before I forced myself to inhale slowly, letting the calm surface of my expression mask the whirlwind inside. Amanda was there, perched on a chair with a glass of sparkling cider in her hand, her smile bright but measured, eyes darting briefly toward me before returning to her conversation with James. James himself glanced up just long enough to acknowledge my presence with a polite, almost distant nod, his attention quickly diverted back to the toast that the matriarch of his wife's side was giving. I allowed my gaze to sweep over the room, noting the pastel decorations, the carefully arranged Easter eggs on each centerpiece, the subtle sense of spring in every corner, and the delighted squeals of Lily as she rushed from one cousin to another. Everything looked perfectly orchestrated, a picture of familial joy, yet the weight of that sign, the deliberate placement of it on the edge of my table, sent a cold ripple through my chest. I smiled faintly, the gesture small and contained, turning my eyes toward the large bay window that opened to the backyard where the tulips were just beginning to bloom. The light caught on the delicate strands of my silver hair, reminding me of decades I had invested in this family, years of preparing holidays, teaching recipes, sewing costumes, and arranging parties with meticulous care. And yet, here I was, reduced to a label they chose to pin on me. I slid into my chair slowly, careful not to let the tremor in my hand betray my composure, and took note of the whispered comments that floated across the room like drifting petals, some praising the decorations, some making casual remarks that hinted at amusement at my expense. I could feel the subtle shifts of energy, the tiny pauses in conversation when Amanda passed by, her smile never quite reaching her eyes, a practiced elegance hiding a calculating glance. I traced the rim of my glass absent-mindedly, sipping water, letting the cool liquid steady the surge of emotions, focusing instead on the spring lights streaming through the blinds, the shadow of a leaf moving across the floor. Lily bounded over to my side, her small hand brushing mine, whispering, "Grandma, don't worry about them. I know it's not right." Her words were a balm, a gentle anchor that tethered me to my own sense of dignity and clarity. I nodded to her, offering a small, reassuring smile, and let my eyes roam the table once more, observing the intricate place settings, the dishes I had suggested, and in some cases prepared, the care with which the room had been arranged, all now tinged with irony because the person who should have been recognized as the host was instead the subject of mockery. I allowed my mind to drift to memories of past Easter gatherings, the laughter of children chasing eggs, the pride in watching my family gather around a table I had prepared, the warmth of smiles and the shared stories, and contrasted it with the hollow performances I witnessed now. Every gesture seemed carefully choreographed to exclude me, to diminish my presence, yet I remained still, observing, listening, and calculating. The quiet hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, the muted laughter, all served as a backdrop to the inner deliberation forming in my mind. I noticed how Amanda subtly maneuvered her way to draw attention to the arrangements she had made, her eyes scanning for reactions, her posture confident, yet ever so slightly tense when our gazes nearly met. James kept nodding politely at her remarks, appearing oblivious to the silent tension but not quite escaping the small, precise movements that betrayed an awareness of the undercurrent. I let a slow breath escape, steadying the tightening in my chest, and felt the flicker of resolve ignite. If they thought this was merely a success at humiliating me, they were mistaken. I would allow the party to proceed, laughter and clinking of cutlery and playful shouting, while my mind quietly recorded every small infraction, every subtle slight, and every calculated maneuver. Each movement, each carefully spoken sentence, would become part of a tapestry I could later reveal, not with anger, but with the precision of long-honed understanding. I turned my attention briefly to the dessert table, noting the chocolate nests and pastel cupcakes, the tiny candy eggs, and the centerpiece cake that had been chosen with care, imagining how Amanda and James would react when they realized that my knowledge of the household, my awareness of the subtle cues, and my strategic patience would give me the quiet power to recalibrate the dynamic entirely. And with that thought, a quiet smile curved my lips, contained, deliberate, a small but potent declaration that I had not been defeated, that the label on the table was a provocation they had underestimated, and that the revelation I would have later would shift the balance without them ever seeing it coming. I reached for the napkin, smoothed it over my hands, and took a sip from my glass once more, feeling the cool calm wash through me, aware of the soft laughter, the music playing in the background, and the delicate pastel decorations, all providing a contrast to the careful, deliberate awareness I was cultivating within myself, knowing that this was not a moment of loss but a moment of preparation, of observation, of a silent reclamation that would unfold in the hours to come. The laughter continued around me, light and careless, but I felt the distance between us as though it were a tangible barrier. I poured myself another glass of water, careful not to disturb the neat arrangement of the tableware, and let my eyes travel over the room again, noticing small details I had not taken in at first glance. The place cards shimmered in the soft light, each one perfectly scripted, and yet they carried an invisible message, a subtle reinforcement of the division I had sensed from the moment I walked in. Amanda moved through the guests with a practiced ease, offering a laugh here, a gentle nod there, all the while maintaining her poised smile. Yet her eyes carried that faint glint of calculation, a silent confirmation that she understood the impact of the words on my table. James occasionally glanced toward her, a brief flash of awareness passing between them, and then they both returned to their interactions with others, leaving me observing from my perch at the side, a quiet presence amid the bustling celebration. I reached for the napkin, folding and refolding it slowly, allowing the rhythm to steady my thoughts and remind me of the clarity I needed to maintain. Lily darted around the room, her excitement uncontainable, but she paused by my side, tugging lightly at my sleeve to draw my attention to a small mishap in the arrangement of the dessert table, her bright eyes sparkling with innocence and concern. I bent slightly to acknowledge her, murmuring a few gentle words of guidance, and in that moment, her quiet confidence in my ability to notice, to correct, to observe, was a subtle reminder that not all eyes were blind to what was happening. As the conversations flowed and the plates were filled and emptied, I noticed the subtle ways in which my contributions had been minimized, the recipes I had suggested slightly altered without mention, the decorations I had selected overshadowed by Amanda's personal touches. Yet I did not react outwardly, instead allowing the observation to accumulate silently, each small act recorded in my memory for later reflection. I shifted my focus to the windows again, watching the shadows of the budding trees move across the polished floorboards, their slow, steady progress a calming counterpoint to the sharpness of the social landscape around me. My mind wandered to the many Easters past, to the joy of family members gathering, to the warmth of shared meals and laughter, to the pride I had once felt in creating an environment that welcomed everyone, and I contrasted that with the current atmosphere, the orchestrated cheer that masked subtle exclusion. The hum of conversation, the occasional clinking of glasses, the muted laughter, all became a soundtrack to the growing awareness of the deliberate distancing. I noted the angles at which Amanda positioned herself, the brief but meaningful looks shared with James, and the almost imperceptible pauses when their eyes flicked toward me, moments that betrayed awareness and intent. Each instance, however minor, strengthened the resolve that had begun to simmer inside me, a recognition that my presence, my experience, and my contributions could not be erased simply by labels or social maneuvering. I allowed a slow breath to anchor me, feeling the tension ease just enough to observe without immediate reaction, to catalog without judgment, to let the subtle machinations of the room unfold before me as though I were watching a delicate play, each actor unaware that their smallest actions were being meticulously noted. Even as the music shifted to a lighter, more playful tune, I remained attuned to the underlying currents, the flicker of expressions, the cadence of laughter, the way chairs were adjusted and glasses repositioned. I found a quiet satisfaction in the awareness that my patience, my calm, and my deliberate observation were themselves a form of influence, a silent counterbalance to the overt displays of control and preference. Lily returned briefly to my side, whispering another small comment, and I nodded, offering a fleeting smile, the kind that acknowledged both her presence and my growing confidence. The afternoon sun began to dip lower, casting long, warm rays across the room, illuminating the subtle textures of the tablecloths and the polished surfaces, a natural spotlight on the quiet strength that I was cultivating. I kept my posture straight, my hands folded neatly in my lap, and let the interactions around me continue, all while internalizing the subtle lessons, the hidden dynamics, and the gentle reminders that power is not always displayed loudly, but often observed, understood, and exercised with patience. The room, the sounds, the interactions, and the carefully curated atmosphere became a study, a rehearsal space in which I prepared my mind for the moments to come, moments in which the quiet accumulation of knowledge, observation, and composure would allow me to act with a precision that no one could anticipate, turning the very elements meant to diminish me into instruments of my quiet authority. The chatter around me continued, soft and vibrant, yet I felt an invisible wall separating me from the warmth of the gathering. I sipped my water, feeling the chill of detachment brush against the steady rhythm of my heartbeat, and allowed my eyes to wander over the room, cataloging every detail with meticulous care. The pastel decorations shimmered in the sunlight, the delicate floral arrangements were positioned with precision, and the centerpiece of chocolate bunnies and colored eggs gleamed under the overhead lights, each element a testament to the effort that had been invested. Amanda flitted between guests, offering polite nods and measured laughter, her movements deliberate, her glances calculated, each interaction carrying an unspoken assertion of control. James laughed at a remark from his cousin, his eyes flicking briefly toward Amanda before returning to the conversation, unaware of the quiet observations I had been recording, noting their subtle coordination and timing. Lily came bounding over, a small basket of eggs in hand, her enthusiasm infectious but tempered by the recognition of the tension in the room. She leaned close, whispering a comment that only I could hear, and in that moment, her faith in me felt like a gentle anchor amidst the carefully curated social storm. I adjusted the folds of my dress and placed my hands neatly in my lap, letting my posture convey calm and poise even as my mind cataloged each minor slight, each understated maneuver, each glance that spoke volumes. The soft clinking of silverware against plates punctuated the background hum of conversation, each sound a reminder of the rhythm of life moving on, indifferent to the subtleties of human intent. I noticed how Amanda subtly drew attention to the arrangements she had made, ensuring that her influence and taste dominated, while the contributions I had made were quietly overlooked. I allowed myself a small, controlled smile, not for amusement, but as an acknowledgement of the awareness I had gained, the clarity that had settled into my consciousness. I watched as James moved through the room, his posture and expressions carefully curated to appear engaged yet nonchalant, all while maintaining a tacit support for Amanda's subtle assertions. I reflected on the years of gatherings, of carefully prepared meals, of crafting environments that celebrated family and joy, and compared those moments with the current orchestrated cheer, realizing that every smile, every compliment, and every gesture was now a carefully arranged tableau in which my presence had been diminished. I focused on the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, the shadows shifting across the wooden floor, the gentle rustle of leaves outside, allowing these observations of the natural world to ground me while I absorbed the intricacies of the social dynamics within. Every interaction, every soft-spoken sentence, every fleeting glance was noted, remembered, and placed into a growing mosaic of understanding. I allowed my mind to trace the unspoken patterns of dominance and exclusion, recognizing the precision with which they had sought to control the narrative and shape perception. As I observed Amanda and James, I began to feel the stirrings of a plan, a quiet preparation that did not require confrontation, only awareness, patience, and the careful orchestration of my own responses. Each action, each movement, each carefully timed comment would be a piece of the larger picture I intended to shape, a gentle reclamation of influence that relied not on noise or spectacle, but on subtlety, precision, and the patience of long observation. Lily returned momentarily to my side, offering another whispered comment that affirmed my growing certainty, and I allowed a fleeting smile, the kind that acknowledged both her insight and my accumulating understanding. The room continued its lively symphony of conversation and laughter, yet beneath it, I moved with quiet purpose, attuned to every nuance, every ripple, every hint of intent. The polished surfaces, the sunlight, the pastel hues all served as a backdrop to my awareness, a subtle stage upon which the intricate play of human behavior unfolded. I felt the power in observation, the quiet authority in patience, and the measured control and understanding, each element reinforcing that my presence, though understated, remained potent. I set my glass down with deliberate care, folded my napkin once more, and allowed my gaze to sweep the room, confident that the revelation I had begun to sense would unfold in due course, guided by my calm, deliberate awareness, and the quiet orchestration of insight that only time and observation could provide. As the afternoon wore on, I observed the subtle shifts in the gathering, the tiny exchanges that carried meaning beneath the surface. Amanda moved with calculated grace, ensuring her laughter aligned with the rhythm of the room, her eyes scanning for acknowledgement and approval, her gestures precise, almost choreographed. James, seated beside her, nodded and smiled at moments that required politeness, his attention split between the immediate conversation and the overarching dynamic, as if he were constantly gauging the responses of others. I remained composed, folding my napkin in slow, deliberate motions, letting the soft clinking of cutlery and the muted hum of voices provide a backdrop to my careful observations. Lily skipped past my table, clutching a small bouquet of spring flowers, her excitement and curiosity providing a gentle contrast to the orchestrated behaviors of the adults, and she paused briefly, whispering, "Grandma, they do not see everything." I nodded, acknowledging her insight, feeling the small reassurance of her perception reinforcing my own awareness. The pastel-hued decorations and the delicate arrangement of the table settings seemed almost ironic, a visual representation of the care taken to present a harmonious gathering while simultaneously enforcing subtle exclusion. Each interaction I witnessed was a piece of a larger puzzle. The way Amanda tilted her head during conversations, the way she allowed her smile to linger just long enough to signal control, the way James diverted attention with carefully timed remarks. I cataloged each of these details silently, understanding that the true measure of influence and presence was in perception and awareness rather than overt assertion. I allowed my gaze to drift toward the sun-drenched windows, watching the movement of the branches and the play of light across the polished floors, using the natural rhythm outside to center my thoughts and to remind myself that calm observation could reveal more than immediate reaction. Every subtle gesture, every whispered comment, every carefully managed interaction was a data point, a layer of understanding that I would integrate into my perception of the family dynamic. I reflected on previous gatherings, on Easters and birthdays and holidays past, each memory a benchmark for how inclusion and acknowledgement should feel, and contrasted them with the present moment, noting the absence of recognition and the deliberate overshadowing of my presence. My hands rested lightly on the table, fingertips tracing the smooth surface of the linen, and I allowed myself a slow breath, acknowledging the emotions stirring beneath the surface while maintaining the outward appearance of composed neutrality. I considered the interactions I had already observed, the small but meaningful confirmations from Lily, and the almost imperceptible pauses in Amanda's behavior when our eyes met briefly, and I felt the quiet accumulation of insight solidifying into a strategy that required patience, precision, and restraint. The music shifted slightly, a gentle background melody designed to evoke cheer and contentment, and yet I remained attuned to the subtleties in its rhythm, the way it framed the social exchanges, providing a cadence to which the gathering moved without noticing my silent analysis. I noted the placement of each dish, the distribution of the colored eggs, the subtle adjustments in seating arrangements, all of which were part of the performance, but also indicators of intention and priority. My thoughts moved seamlessly between observation and reflection, cataloging the layers of interaction, understanding the implicit hierarchies and the delicate nuances of attention, all while maintaining the grace and composure that allowed me to blend unobtrusively into the environment. I recognized that my quiet presence, my deliberate engagement, and my careful attention provided a form of agency that could operate independently of the overt acknowledgement or approval of others, a means of exerting influence through awareness and discernment. Each small movement, each glance, each pause was part of the tapestry I was constructing in my mind, a mental map of dynamics, power, and perception. And as I watched the gathering continue, the laughter, the polite exchanges, and the subtle assertions of control, I felt a steady calm settling over me, a recognition that the true measure of presence and authority did not rely on public acknowledgement, but on the depth of understanding, patience, and the strategic use of observation to guide future action and insight. The room had settled into a quiet rhythm, the ebb and flow of conversation creating pockets of stillness that I used to refine my awareness of every subtle exchange. Amanda was directing attention with precision, guiding discussions toward her carefully curated topics, while James offered polite affirmations at just the right moments to maintain the veneer of congeniality. I observed each motion, each tilt of the head, each pause, and filed them away, forming a detailed map of the intricate social maneuvering. Lily approached once more, her small hands clutching a painted egg, and whispered, "Grandma, she does not notice you noticing." I nodded, allowing a faint, controlled smile to curve my lips, acknowledging both her words and the quiet power that observation offered. The pastel arrangements, the delicate linens, the shimmer of polished silver, all served as a backdrop to the underlying dynamics, highlighting the contrast between surface cheer and concealed intentions. I watched Amanda carefully place a dish onto the table, her movements deliberate and exact, ensuring that the spotlight remained on her contributions, while subtly diminishing mine. James adjusted the centerpiece slightly, an almost imperceptible act that reinforced the hierarchy that had been established without overt statements. I allowed my fingers to trace the rim of my glass, grounding myself in the tactile sensations of the moment, the coolness of the water, the smoothness of the crystal, a steadying counterpoint to the currents of social calculations swirling around me. Each bite of food I took was deliberate, measured, a reminder that patience and calm could coexist with acute awareness and strategic thinking. I reflected on the subtle cues that indicated the priorities of those around me, noting the timing of glances, the modulation of voices, the slight adjustments in posture, all of which revealed layers of intention that were not immediately evident. The music shifted softly, an unassuming accompaniment to the interactions, and I found a rhythm in my observations that allowed me to remain present without revealing the depth of my scrutiny. Lily skipped past again, a burst of innocence and energy, and I used these interludes to recalibrate, allowing the natural flow of the gathering to continue while I maintained an internal ledger of actions and reactions. I focused on the light filtering through the tall windows, illuminating the polished surfaces, the pastel decorations, the intricate details of the food presentation, each element serving as both a celebration and a canvas for the behaviors being enacted. I recognized that my quiet presence, the measured patience, and the subtle acknowledgement of small gestures allowed me to maintain authority in the room without confrontation, a form of influence that relied on awareness and understanding rather than volume or spectacle. The conversations around me continued, punctuated by laughter and the occasional clinking of glasses, yet beneath the surface, the deliberate orchestration of attention and approval by Amanda and James became increasingly clear. I cataloged each instance, each expression, each nuanced exchange, aware that the accumulation of these details would inform the moments to come when observation transformed into subtle, precise action. I allowed myself a deep breath, feeling the calm and the quiet strength that had been building, a recognition that the gathering, though designed to diminish my presence, had provided the perfect opportunity to assess, understand, and prepare. Every subtle shift in posture, every strategic placement of words, every nuanced glance was now part of an internal map, and I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that patience and composure could wield influence just as effectively as overt action. As the afternoon continued, the room filled with a gentle, golden light, and I remained at my place, attentive, poised, and deeply aware, observing the layers of interaction and intention, knowing that the power of understanding and strategic calm was fully mine to exercise when the moment required. The golden light of the late afternoon filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors and illuminating the pastel decorations with a soft glow. I adjusted my posture, sitting upright, my hands resting lightly on the edge of the table, and allowed my eyes to follow the flow of activity around me, observing the nuances of behavior that spoke louder than any words. Amanda moved with deliberate charm, directing conversation subtly, her laughter precise and measured, each motion reinforcing her intended control over the room. James responded in kind, offering polite affirmations, his presence supportive but restrained, maintaining the facade of casual engagement. I allowed my senses to absorb every detail, from the tilt of a head to the timing of a glance, the cadence of their voices, and the placement of dishes on the table, cataloging these silent cues as evidence of intent and pattern. Lily returned briefly, her small voice and spontaneous movements providing contrast to the orchestrated precision of the adults, her innocent awareness offering me a small measure of affirmation that I was not completely unseen. I let my attention drift to the delicate interplay of sunlight and shadow across the surfaces, using the slow movement of the day to anchor my observations and steady my awareness. Every subtle gesture and quiet maneuver became part of a larger understanding of the dynamics at play, each interaction revealing the priorities, intentions, and hidden calculations of those around me. I noted how Amanda emphasized her contributions, how James aligned himself with her, and how these acts subtly redefined the social hierarchy in the room. I remained outwardly calm, folding and refolding my napkin, sipping water with deliberate care, allowing my presence to be understated while my mind absorbed the intricate choreography unfolding. The quiet hum of conversation, the soft clinking of silverware, the occasional burst of laughter, all served as a backdrop to the keen observation that allowed me to understand the hidden patterns of influence and recognition. I considered past gatherings, contrasting the genuine warmth and inclusion of those events with the current display of orchestrated social maneuvering, recognizing the shift in dynamics and the subtle assertion of authority by Amanda and James. My thoughts traced the invisible lines of interaction, cataloging each deliberate action, every carefully timed comment, every fleeting look, as I prepared for the moments when observation would transition into informed, precise action. I focused on the textures and colors around me, the arrangement of the centerpiece, the polished surface of the table, the delicate napkins, each element a reminder that careful observation could reveal truths that were not immediately visible. I felt the quiet satisfaction of understanding, the calm power that comes from awareness, the ability to perceive and anticipate without confrontation. Each note, each movement, each small inflection became a piece of the larger puzzle, and I allowed my mind to build a complete picture of the intentions and subtle manipulations at play. The gathering continued, laughter and conversation weaving through the room, while I remained poised and deliberate, fully aware of every undercurrent, every strategic interaction, and every subtle assertion of influence, knowing that the accumulation of these details would inform the precise, measured actions I would take when the moment demanded a quiet but effective response. The late afternoon lights softened across the room, the golden rays highlighting the gentle textures of the table linens and the pastel decorations, and I remained at my seat, poised, calm, and fully attuned to the subtle movements around me. Amanda laughed at a story told by a distant relative, her voice carrying a polished warmth that seemed rehearsed, and I noticed the way she angled herself slightly, positioning her shoulder to ensure the focus remained on her. James nodded along, his responses brief and carefully timed, his attention a silent endorsement of the performance, yet his eyes flickered ever so slightly toward me, revealing the awareness that he sensed my presence more keenly than he allowed. I allowed my gaze to wander over the small details, noting the way silverware gleamed, the subtle alignment of place settings, the carefully chosen flowers, all intended to convey harmony while subtly reinforcing hierarchy. Lily darted between the legs of the adults, her excitement a bright punctuation in the otherwise carefully choreographed social landscape, and she paused at my side to whisper, "Grandma, you notice everything, right?" I nodded, a faint smile touching my lips, a silent acknowledgement of her perception and of the quiet power that observation affords. I sipped my water slowly, letting the cool liquid steady my mind, and allowed my thoughts to organize the accumulation of small insights into a coherent understanding of the gathering. Each gesture and glance, each carefully timed exchange, forming a mental map of priorities, intentions, and influence. The soft hum of conversation, the muted clinking of glasses, the occasional burst of laughter, all became part of the rhythm to which I attuned myself, learning the unspoken patterns of dominance and preference that Amanda and James were imposing, while simultaneously reinforcing my own sense of control through quiet observation. I noted how Amanda would emphasize her contributions, her eyes briefly flicking toward James for affirmation, and how he, in turn, offered subtle nods and smiles that maintained the illusion of effortless engagement while consolidating their influence. Each moment was an opportunity to absorb, to understand, and to catalog without confrontation, creating an internal record that would inform the strategic patience that I would exercise in the hours to come. I observed the interplay of light and shadow as the sun began to descend, the long, golden beams highlighting the textures of the room and casting delicate patterns across the polished wood, a visual reminder of the calm and steady presence I maintained amidst the orchestrated activities. The movement of Lily, the interactions of Amanda and James, the small adjustments in the table arrangement, all of it contributed to the understanding that I was constructing silently, a form of authority grounded in awareness, composure, and patience. I allowed myself a slow breath, feeling the subtle satisfaction of insight accumulating, each subtle slight, each carefully managed gesture, each nuanced interaction reinforcing the power of perception over overt assertion. The gathering continued, laughter and conversation weaving seamlessly, yet I remained quietly sovereign in my observations, understanding the currents beneath the surface, noting the implications of every expression and movement, and recognizing that the control I wielded did not require volume, but rather the meticulous attention to detail, patience, and the quiet orchestration of awareness that would guide the unfolding moments with precision and subtlety. The late afternoon continued to deepen, casting a warm glow across the dining room and stretching long shadows over the polished hardwood floors. I sat with quiet composure, my hands resting lightly on the table, observing every nuance of the gathering with deliberate focus. Amanda moved gracefully among the guests, her laughter bright yet measured, ensuring that attention remained on her contributions while simultaneously maintaining a controlled distance from mine. James responded to her cues with subtle affirmations, his polite nods and brief smiles providing reinforcement to the structure she maintained. I cataloged each gesture, each glance, and each carefully timed comment, noting the intricacies of their coordination and the unspoken signals that guided the room's social hierarchy. Lily ran past my table, her small hands clutching a painted egg, and paused just long enough to whisper, "Grandma, they do not notice you seeing them." I offered a brief, controlled smile, feeling the reassurance of her awareness, a gentle confirmation that my presence, though understated, was keenly observed by the one who mattered most to me. The soft clinking of silverware, the muted conversation, and the occasional burst of laughter formed a gentle rhythm, allowing me to maintain a measured sense of control over my internal state while absorbing the nuances of interaction around me. I noted the deliberate positioning of dishes and centerpieces, the subtle adjustments of chairs, the careful timing of remarks, all orchestrated to convey authority while subtly excluding me. I remained outwardly calm, sipping my water slowly and methodically, allowing the tactile sensation of the glass and the coolness of the liquid to anchor me in the moment. My thoughts drifted to previous gatherings, contrasting the genuine warmth and inclusion of the past with the orchestrated precision of the present, and I recognized how awareness and observation offered a quiet form of power, a strategic presence that needed no overt assertion. The sunlight shifted through the windows, highlighting the pastel decorations and the polished surfaces, a reminder that patience and attentiveness could shape perception without confrontation. I reflected on each subtle act of dominance, the intentional placement of attention, and the careful modulation of tone, understanding the silent hierarchy in the room and noting how each small action contributed to the overall dynamic. Lily's playful movements and whispered comments punctuated my observations, providing moments of clarity and reaffirmation that my awareness was both seen and valued. I traced the small, deliberate adjustments of Amanda and James, their coordinated behavior, and the nuances of attention, building a comprehensive understanding of the gathering and the underlying intentions. Each measured observation strengthened my sense of control, reinforcing the realization that patience, composure, and deliberate focus provided an authority that would manifest quietly yet unmistakably. The room continued to hum with conversation, the soft music providing a backdrop to the intricate dance of interactions, while I maintained a presence that was both attentive and unassuming. I allowed my mind to organize the subtle cues, the minor gestures, and the carefully curated interactions into a coherent understanding of influence and intent, recognizing the opportunities to assert my presence with precision when the appropriate moment arrived. Every glance, every pause, every shift in posture became part of a mental map, a guide for the actions I would take as awareness transformed into strategic, quiet influence, turning observation into measured authority without the need for overt confrontation or disruption. I felt a calm certainty settle over me, the quiet power of insight, and the understanding that control could be exercised through perception, patience, and the careful orchestration of presence, all while the gathering continued its seemingly cheerful rhythm around me. As the sun dipped lower, painting the room in warm amber hues, I felt a sense of quiet culmination settle over me, the rhythms of the gathering continuing around me like a gentle tide against the shore. Amanda moved through the guests with practiced elegance, her gestures carefully measured, her laughter floating above the table like a delicate melody, while James offered subtle affirmations that reinforced the seamless presentation they maintained together. I sipped my water slowly, allowing the tactile coolness of the glass to steady my focus as I cataloged each nuance of interaction, every tilt of a head, each carefully timed word, and fleeting glance, building a detailed mental map of intentions and priorities. The soft hum of conversation and the occasional clinking of silverware served as a backdrop to my steady observation, each sound punctuating my awareness of the subtle strategies unfolding. Lily skipped by again, her small presence a bright contrast to the orchestrated movements of the adults, and she paused briefly, tugging at my sleeve with a whispered, "Grandma, you see everything, do not you?" I nodded, offering a faint, controlled smile that acknowledged both her insight and my careful attention. The light across the polished wood cast delicate patterns on the floor, accentuating the pastel decorations and table settings, and I allowed the slow passage of the day to provide rhythm to my thoughts, steadying my mind while the family continued their coordinated performance around me. Each small action, each deliberate interaction, was cataloged, noting how Amanda emphasized her contributions, how James aligned himself with her, and how these coordinated gestures subtly directed attention and recognition away from me, shaping the social hierarchy without overt declaration. I reflected briefly on previous gatherings, contrasting the genuine warmth and shared moments of inclusion with the current carefully orchestrated display, and recognized how much the power of observation and strategic patience could reveal. I adjusted my posture, folding my napkin neatly in my lap, feeling the quiet authority of presence without the need for vocal assertion, understanding that influence often resides in awareness rather than in display. The conversations around me flowed seamlessly, laughter and remarks weaving into the soft background music, yet beneath the surface I traced patterns, subtle hierarchies, and the unspoken assertions of control that defined the interactions. I noted the way small gestures reinforced status, the timing of glances, the brief yet pointed pauses, and the way attention was allocated with meticulous care, all while maintaining my outward composure and calm presence. Each observation strengthened my understanding of the room, allowing me to anticipate movements, understand priorities, and perceive the full scope of interactions without drawing attention to myself. Lily's playful energy and occasional whispers provided a grounding presence, affirming the subtle awareness that underpinned my quiet confidence. I felt a sense of quiet satisfaction as I observed the gathering, aware of every nuance, every subtle attempt at control, and every moment that could be transformed into insight or strategic understanding. The light softened further, casting long, gentle shadows, and I allowed the observations, the subtle patterns, and the quiet assessment to coalesce into a clear perception of the dynamic at hand. I remained poised, calm, and deliberate, aware that the culmination of careful observation and patient attention would eventually translate into measured influence, allowing the latent understanding of the gathering and its orchestrated interactions to unfold with quiet, unassuming authority as the evening progressed, leaving the room and its occupants unaware of the depth of insight that had been gathered and the quiet power that rested fully within my hands. Experience a deeply emotional family story as the mother, a widow, navigates a tense Easter gathering with her daughter-in-law and son while observing every subtle nuance of behavior. Helen Parker demonstrates quiet strength and composed awareness as she perceives the underlying intentions and social dynamics that unfold around her, while her granddaughter, Lily, offers moments of clarity and gentle reassurance in the midst of orchestrated interactions. This compelling family story illustrates the power of observation, patience, and strategic understanding within a complex household setting, highlighting the delicate balance between outward politeness and internal insight. As Amanda, the daughter-in-law, subtly directs attention and influence, Helen Parker remains attentive, cataloging gestures, glances, and the flow of conversation in this immersive family story, allowing viewers to experience the nuanced interplay of relationships and social hierarchy. The narrative captures every detail from decor to movement, emphasizing the emotional depth and psychological landscape of a grandmother witnessing orchestrated exclusion while maintaining grace and authority, providing an intimate and revealing family story that engages and resonates with audiences seeking insight into personal dynamics and resilience within familial bonds. Character 1: Helen Parker, age 68, wearing elegant spring dress, standing front-facing full body, view medium-length silver hair, white skin, gentle expression, poised, confident, no cartoon. Character 2: Amanda Parker, age 40, wearing tailored blouse and skirt, standing front-facing, medium-length, brown hair, white skin, composed, confident expression, no cartoon. Scene 1: Helen Parker and Amanda Parker face each other at the Easter gathering, both standing at the edge of the elegantly decorated dining room, tense expressions, sharp eyes, subtle challenge, in posture the pastel decorations, and polished table reflecting the light of a late afternoon sun, a sense of silent confrontation, heavy in the air, poised movements, each evaluating the other, without speaking, intensity radiating from their stances, dynamic cinematic tension palpable in the room, no cartoon. Scene 2: Helen Parker in her home kitchen, arranging flowers for the Easter table, light streaming through the window, silver hair catching the sunlight, calm and focused expression, elegant spring dress, hands moving deliberately over the arrangements, a gentle smile on her face, small gestures of care and ritual, creating a serene domestic atmosphere, no cartoon. Scene 3: Amanda Parker in her office at home, adjusting documents and decorations for the family, gathering tidy blouse and skirt, meticulous posture, confident expression, eyes scanning over papers, and subtle notes on placement, deliberate attention to detail, poised movements reflecting control and anticipation, subtle tension underlying the apparent normalcy, no cartoon. Scene 4: Helen Parker and Amanda Parker interacting with each other and James Parker near the dining room, the family gathering in full swing, subtle expressions of conflict and strategy, Amanda directing conversation, James affirming politely, Helen observing silently, the dynamic charged with psychological tension, movements, small but meaningful gestures creating an intricate web of social influence and power under the pastel decorations and soft lighting, no cartoon. Scene 5: Helen Parker alone in the backyard garden, softly arranging tulips and observing the light falling across the flowers, thoughtful expression, reflective mood, casual spring outfit, hands gently adjusting blooms, a quiet moment of contemplation and preparation connecting inner awareness to the strategic patience required for the evening ahead. No cartoon, no cartoon. Scene 6. Helen Parker walking calmly back into the house from the garden, poised and confident expression, silver hair catching the evening sunlight, both hands resting lightly by her side, room behind filled with family activity, subtle awareness of every movement and expression. Helen standing as a figure of quiet control, anticipation, and readiness for the next moment. Cinematic closure of the sequence embodying composed authority. No cartoon, no cartoon. 1. Helen Parker and Amanda Parker facing each other in a tense standoff at the Easter gathering inside a beautifully decorated dining room, elegant pastel table settings, polished silverware, late afternoon sunlight streaming through windows, both with serious, intense expressions, posture rigid, subtle gestures of challenge, eyes locked evaluating each other, silent confrontation, cinematic tension, palpable atmosphere, poised, suspenseful. Dynamic energy reflected on surfaces and shadows, realistic lighting. No cartoon, no cartoon. 1. 2. Helen Parker in her home kitchen arranging flowers for the Easter table, sunlight through windows, silver hair, glowing, serene, calm expression, focused eyes, gentle smile, graceful posture, elegant spring dress, hands adjusting blooms, carefully, soft, domestic atmosphere, detailed textures of flowers, linens, and tableware, realistic lighting, cinematic, natural setting. No cartoon, no cartoon. 1. 3. Amanda Parker in her home office preparing decorations and documents for family gathering, standing by desk, confident, attentive expression, tailored blouse and skirt, polished appearance, hands arranging papers and small decorative items, eyes sharp, posture poised, calm, authoritative atmosphere, bright daylight streaming through window, details of stationery and decor, realistic lighting, cinematic interior. No cartoon, no cartoon. 2. 4. Helen Parker and Amanda Parker with James Parker near the dining room during Easter gathering, subtle expressions of tension and strategy. Helen observing calmly, Amanda directing conversation, James nodding politely, coordinated gestures, small meaningful interactions, soft pastel table settings and floral arrangements, light reflecting realistic textures, shadows, cinematic composition, attention to facial expressions and posture. No cartoon, no cartoon. 1. 2. 5. Helen Parker alone in backyard garden arranging tulips, thoughtful, reflective expression, hands gently adjusting flowers, casual spring outfit, warm evening sunlight, shadows across petals. Serene, contemplative atmosphere, realistic textures, soft, natural lighting, cinematic perspective. No cartoon, no cartoon. 1. 6. Helen Parker walking calmly back in a house from garden, poised, confident expression, silver hair catching evening light, hands relaxed by sides, subtle awareness of family activity, behind composed presence, cinematic framing, soft shadows, realistic textures, pastel colors of dining room, elegant table settings. No cartoon, no cartoon. 1.